leadership. We make sure that it is not about us. And it's not necessarily about the people we're leading. It's about where we are all headed. Because every single leadership conversation is about the future.
You've heard the term work-life balance. Well, we're going to shatter that long-standing phrase, because the reality is, you know this, I know this, there's no such thing as true balance. But there can be harmony. There can be a masterpiece. I can't wait for you to listen in as I spend time with John Klymshyn, an expert in this area, who will unpack, give us the tools we need to thrive in harmony as business leaders. I'm Dr. Nate Sala. This is a call to leadership. Thank you so much for being on the show. What a treat to have you join us on this episode of A Call to Leadership. You have been in leadership roles for how many years now?
Well, when you say in leadership roles, I was employed as a leader for 8 years. Mm-hmm. I currently, I make the distinction between being self-employed and being an entrepreneur for a specific reason. I am self-employed and have been for 23 years. An entrepreneur creates work for other people. A self-employed person creates work for themselves. Mm-hmm. So that I've been doing that. When I was employed, and I was employed in leadership roles, leading sales teams of varying sizes, that was an 8-year tenure in a couple of different industries. And I had everything from a 3-person sales force to a 70-person sales force over the course of my journeys around sales leadership.
And were you always drawn to sales leadership? I mean, when you were a child, were you selling as a kid?
As a child and up to now, as you can see, I'm drawn to performance, whether that is me performing for others or, and this is really the magic of my musical career, is drawing performance out of others, being able to create a performance together. And when I found that intersection, and it occurred to me that that's really what being a sales leader was about, that led to the publication of my second book. It has given tremendous legs to my conversations with leaders, and there's a lot more I can say about that.
Yeah, no, this is good. So, as a musician, do you see being a musician and working in sales and or leadership is in harmony? Do you see them working together?
That's the perfect word for it. Nate, you and I have talked, or is it Dr. Nate?
Call me Nate, yes.
Or is it Your Highness?
Your Highness.
I think that one of the frustrations in modern life is what I call the great American lie. And the great American lie is that you should be able to achieve a work-life balance. That's a lie. Because if you look at the definition of balance means that things are equally weighted on both sides, right? Think of the scales, think of the sign for Libra, right? We want things to be perfectly balanced. I'm 63 years old, and let me tell you something. I have never in my life ever participated in a relationship that was perfectly balanced for any extended period of time.
Right.
And so when I made that discovery, I mean, I accepted that lie for a long time, and I worked very hard at it, and I lost some hair over it and gained some gray over it. What I found, and as you mentioned, what I'm constantly embracing and looking to create is harmony, because harmony is very different from balance. Harmony is a full participation. Harmony is the bringing forward of a particular voice in conjunction with, in the same moment with other voices. The great basis of all Western music is the triad, and it's the chord. There are 3 notes in that triad, 3 notes in every basic chord. Now you can go to major 7s and you can go to sharp diminished ninths and all that stuff. But those three voices, I mean, look at artists over our lifetime, like Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Those three voices together created something that all of their individual solo work never came close to, as far as that wonderful out-of-body, ethereal, memorable thing that people wanted to repeat again and again and again. So harmony in sales, harmony in leadership, harmony in language, to me are these are, to use your phrase, that's part of the call to leadership. Creating harmony and participating in a harmonious life is the highest calling. And it does is it pulls us away from the things that attempt to drag us down, the things that attempt to clip our wings, the things that attempt to convince us that who we are and what we believe are in some way, shape, or form incorrect. And that's not a path I want to pursue.
And you make that distinction you make is so powerful, because we buy into that notion, that phrase, that work-life balance. It's such a buzz phrase. But even my own life, I've been an entrepreneur for, if I just consider 27 years of formal entrepreneurship, like before my teen years of just testing it out. And I've never tried to balance because I always thought it was some kind of a farce. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Number one, I really love to work. I love to create. And if I wasn't married, I certainly would be definitely labeled a workaholic. But even when I'm in my other, so you consider work and life, right? Life, I guess if you would classify life as maybe family life or recreational life or different aspects of that were everything basically that wasn't your business life, right? Well, and I think about it like this. If it was like a balance, then I mean, we just balance the hours, right? So however many hours I've got in the day that I'm waking, let's call it 18 hours of waking. If you sleep 6 hours, okay, maybe you sleep that. So then I've got to slice that in half, right? 9 and 9. And it's absurd to me to think, okay, well, these other 9 hours I'm going to be spending, with my wife or my son or doing this or that. Maybe they don't want to spend that kind of time with me. I found that my wife likes me 2 or 3 hours a day, max. And that's nothing against me. We have a wonderful relationship, but she's got other things to do. I guess the point I'm making is there's a lack of practicality even in that statement. And I think it's like, and to use the word harmony to me it's very attractive. It's beautiful. And the artist factor, because I hadn't thought about this extensively, but just having this brief conversation with you, I think about Steve Jobs. And of course, a lot of my PhD research was on Steve Jobs and his visionary leadership and whatnot. But he loved the art side of business. And he was very fascinated with music and Dylan and others. And he was a music critic, if you will. And so he integrated this mindset of the artist in his business model. And in terms of you think about how a musician attracts a listener to be drawn in to this experience.
Yes, it is about the experience. You hear musicians talk about they want to express themselves. What I want people to feel something. I don't want to determine what they should feel, right? I was performing a week ago, and I was playing a song, and someone came in and her face lit up, and she just locked eyes with me and waited until the end of the song and applauded and said, "Oh, I love such and such an artist." And I said, "Well, I do too. However, you know who actually wrote that song?" She was surprised to find out that the person that had a hit with that song hadn't written it. Was that the appropriate thing for me to say to her right then? No, but here's the thing. She was immediately caught up in what that song meant to her. And when we talk about a call to leadership, to me, we're talking about language. And to me, language at its core is music. We can say, well, come on, we're just having a conversation. You adding the word just says that this conversation is not as important to you as it is to me. I just want to do it. Well, do you want to do it or not? Are you apologizing for it? Are you dismissing it? What is it that you want to focus your attention on? And to me, the big question we all have to answer is, and we answer it through action. I think that the thoughtful person chooses the actions. The question we all have to answer is, how do you want to spend your time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I want to spend my time with as much harmony and joy as I can possibly squeeze out of this life.
Mm. And does that pour into how you create relationships, business and otherwise?
Well, when you say pour into, again, because we're language fanatics, it's not like I have a picture and I'm tilting it onto someone's head, right? We were talking earlier about work and life not being separate. Again, that's an American notion, okay? It doesn't mean it's necessarily wrong. It's just, okay, you really should have a work-life balance. Show me someone who does. Show me someone who does. Or show me someone who absolutely loves what they do and they live a happy life. Guess what? There is no separation between who they are and what they do. There is no separation between who I am and what I do. How I parent, how I maintain a relationship with my wife, how I treat friends, how I allocate my time. Because tick-tock, man. Right. Tick friggin' tock, right? At my age, do I have more days behind me than ahead of me? Don't know. But if that is the practicality, I want those days to count. Mm. And if I can create and participate in harmony, then I'm stepping into an environment of joy. And if me helping someone understand and be ready to release their potential, if I do that once in a day, that day, then I can put an X on the calendar. Not that I have one, but the mental thing, and say, that was a good day. Yeah. You made an impact. When there's no separation between who we are and what we do, we don't second guess ourselves, and we are fully and deeply connected to our purpose.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite books of all time is The Purpose Driven Life. And the first sentence in that book pretty much tells the whole story, but it's still worth reading.
Not about you, right? Yeah, actually, I just ordered 5 copies right. for the family members. And
interesting, the way you emphasize, you said it's not about you. To me, being from New York, it's not about you.
Right. No doubt. Yeah, I love how Rick Warren starts that book. It resonates with me as well, because when we can take the focus off of ourselves and really project it out and say, like when you're writing music, right? I mean, have you written your own songs? Lots. Okay. So when you're writing music, and I'm not a musician, so forgive my ignorance because I'm learning. I come from a family. Right, we can still be friends, right? I come from a family of philosophers and poets, right? So I've written lots and lots of, but none of it pays. That's why I got a business degree. Just saying. So anyway, I got a lot of poor relatives, but no, but they're but they've found a meaning of life. But anyhow, when you write music, I mean, are you thinking about? Does that phrase come into play? It's not about you.
Yeah. When I write music, when I work on arrangements, when I try a new approach to a song, it's almost as if I'm not even in the room. I have successfully gotten out of the way. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I have stepped into flow. And flow is an out-of-body experience. And all music is an out-of-body experience because it exists out here. It is the one invisible art, right? And it is, to me, it's the unfiltered one. You look at a painting, you decide whether or not you like it. You think about it. You absorb the color. You look at the shapes, the expression, what's being depicted, right? Or not, depending on whether it's Monet or Picasso. With music, there's no filter. The music goes in your ear and goes right to your heart. You either respond to it or you don't. Well, wait a minute. If you don't respond to it, it means it did not resonate. So you don't like that artist, but you do like that one. It's because the vibrations are continuing. So when I'm writing music, I mean, I've read extensive interviews with some of the greatest writers of our modern life, and all of them say, the songs show up. Mm-hmm. I pick up my guitar, I sit down at the piano, I'm driving my car, and the songs show up. One of the most recorded songs in history, in recording history, is Yesterday by Paul McCartney. And of course, it's credited to Lennon and McCartney because that was their deal. He said he was driving to his farm and the melody arrived in his mind. And the initial words to that were scrambled eggs. Scrambled eggs. Da, 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 da.
Really?
Writing is opening a valve.
Mm.
And when we make sure that we are distracted with other stuff, then we don't create. We were created. So guess what? We are here to create, whether it's to create a leadership environment or a leadership language, whether it's to create a better version of the people around us, whether it's to create an experience. That there's immense power in that. That's to me, that's more powerful than the Avengers.
Uh-oh.
And that's deep. I've watched every one of those movies.
Come on.
Huh?
Come on. So this valve, let's go down this rabbit hole. Tell me more about this valve, opening this valve.
Well, it's not a rabbit hole because a rabbit hole seems small and dark and limiting and going somewhere that is uncertain. While creativity is uncertain, it's effectively bringing yourself above the clouds. Mm. And when you open the valve, you get out of the way. When you open the valve, you say, okay, I'm here to accept something, to shape something, to be the vessel for something. And I've written books, I've written short stories, I've written music, I've written this, that, and the other. I don't remember ever, I don't remember any of the moments where I was creating. I look at my work or I listen to it and I say, oh, yeah, that sounds like me. But I don't remember sitting down and putting together the phraseology. I don't remember putting together maybe the outline, but the actual expression of the ideas and the work toward clarity, that's opening a valve.
Yeah.
Because I believe that we all have that valve. Some of us act like we don't have it. Okay, that's your choice. I'm not saying that you should. To me, Nate, should is, if not it is one of the most potent words in the language. I avoid it at all costs. Mm. The old joke from my father's generation was, you never want to should all over yourself.
Yeah. You mentioned creativity and clarity, and I think these are critical aspects of leadership. We're talking about, and when you were talking about creating music, and why even go down up this beautiful route to understanding it better, because I think there's the parallels we're talking about between writing music and expressing leadership have some very important context to unfold. And what writing music, creating a song is a form of leadership. You're taking someone on a journey, an experience that you hope, and I hope we can use the word hope, right? That you hope, that you desire for them to ultimately have a moving experience or a pleasant experience, a joyful experience.
You want it to speak to them.
Yes.
You want it to speak to them. You don't want them to think, oh, he is speaking to me. The music is speaking to them. The music is outside of me. The music is sitting in that guitar, but until I get involved, it'll stay there. Right? I've played multiple instruments over my many years. This is the only instrument that I've ever played that I feel as though I'm actually pulling the music out of.
Wow.
It's as though there's this limitless, in that sound hole is the portal to limitless music, right? It's 6 strings. It's however many frets, but the potential combinations are limitless. I mean, between Beethoven and Paul McCartney, they still have not found out what all of the potential combinations of those 12 notes and those octaves are. So in opening a valve, we do the same thing with leadership. We make sure that it is not about us. And it's not necessarily about the people we're leading. It's about where we are all headed. Because every single leadership conversation is about the future.
That's right. Yes, I 100% agree. And so if we're going to do that,
it's about time.
It's about time. About time I agree with you. If we're going to do that, so you've heard me maybe once or twice express my neophyte in some ways definition of leadership, right? Where many definitions of leadership, but if I try to distill leadership in 10 words or less for my individualized research and my audience, but I identify leadership really as 4 major components, and I say it in this one sentence: leadership is the discovery of, influence toward, and achievement of shared purpose. And so I'm not going to unpack all that, but this discovery piece is really what we're talking about here, right? This is the discovery piece, this creativity piece, this clarity piece, this inventive piece, exploration piece. And I think this is where some of this, we share this with the music, because it's an exploration, a desire of a better future state. And so, nobody wants to go into a worse condition and follow somebody someplace that is less desirable than they are today. In fact, Jeff Bezos famously said in an interview that, look, Amazon will never be relevant if it desires to produce or deliver an experience that is slower or costs more, right? So he says we're always going to be striving for lower cost and faster delivery, right? That's, ultimately better. Because if he said the opposite of that, if he said, yeah, we want things to go slower and we want things to cost more, like, you're not going to follow that guy. I know it sounds trivial and silly, but it's the same concept, even as we're talking about leadership and we're talking about music. Have you seen the movie yesterday?
Yes.
So I watched
a couple of times.
Yeah. So I watched it like 6 times, and my family was sick and tired. I'm always trying to recruit somebody to come over and watch it. Have you seen it? I'm like, oh no, do you like the Beatles? Yeah, come on, you see it. And why do I keep watching it? Because the movie is about discovery. So of course the main character is discovering who he is, and initially it is about him. Right? He makes it about him. Think about it.
No.
Let me.
This movie's a love story.
It is a love story, but let me tell you where he's at.
That's why it works.
Yeah. Well, but he has to.
He had to
discover it.
Expose himself. He had to be completely honest.
Yeah, he had to discover it with himself, because initially he was taking all the credit, and so he didn't have the clarity which emerged through the movie, which is, to me, it's so beautiful as it emerges through this aspect of discovery. And he begins to fade out as an individual and absorb the context as which this new content, and I don't want to give I don't want to do any spoiler alerts for anyone that's like, oh, I'm going to go watch the movie.
Right.
But so where I'm going with this is, how do you, as a musician, as a leader, discover? How do you explore creativity, reach clarity? Are there specific aspects of your daily walk that lend strongly to that?
Absolutely. It starts with curiosity, and it is maintained through staying open. I've accomplished a couple of things in my life. My God, at my age, I would hope I would be able to say that out loud and mean it. I've accomplished a couple of things. Some people in my circle would say, you've crushed it. Others would say, okay, so what's next? One of the transformative questions in my life was asked of me in 2004. I was sitting in someone's office. They had a copy of my first book. Now, at that time, it was not my first book, Nate. It was my book. And he said, I love this book. I think it's one of the best ever written on the subject. And I was like, that's incredibly kind. I'm sitting looking at the bookcase behind his desk that has 50 other books on the same topic. Was he stroking me? Whatever. I don't know. Don't really care. It was great to hear. And then he asked me the transformative question. What will your next book be about? I have written 9 since he asked me that question. Didn't even occur to me that there was a next book, that there were next books, plural. Within a year, I started work on my first novel. That was a 4-year project, not every day, sometimes not for months. But from the idea to me putting the last piece of paper down, face down on top of the stack and saying, it's done, it was 4 years of life. So first, it's curiosity. I'm curious. I can't wait to see what I might do next. Right? The gifts that I have been given have got to be shared.
Yeah.
They've got to be challenged and tested and refined, because I'm scared to death they might be taken away. That's the God's honest truth. Every morning, number one, I hope I can get out of bed. Number two, I hope I can function and communicate. I hope I can play. And I hope I can stretch myself.
Yeah.
Because, the great inspirational / motivational speaker author, the gentleman who co-created a whole class of books, a guy named Mark Victor Hansen. Mark Victor Hansen and Jack Canfield were the original creators of Chicken Soup for the Soul. There was no category for those books before that came out. And within a few years, there were 8, 10, 15 different types of books, right? Chicken Soup for the mother's soul, Chicken Soup for the whatever. And he said, and I'll never forget this, I heard this when I was in my early 30s. He said, the biggest room on earth is the room for self-improvement. So you and I, in our previous conversations in clubhouse rooms, have talked about, or I think we've danced around the distinction between the brain and the mind. The brain is a limited gathering of mush, right? And it exists within the cranium. Mine is not ever going to get any bigger. My mind is constantly expanding based on what I read, what music I listen to, who I spend time with. Right? So how do I keep it going? Well, first is I'm just rabidly curious. I want to see what else there is for me to create, for me to collaborate with on, for me to share. And what I do does not feel like work, and it has not for a long time. I was on a coaching call 10 minutes, 15 minutes before we began this recording. And it's like, okay, he's not getting it. He's not getting where I'm trying to take him. Okay, how about this? Do me a favor and think about it this way. Oh. All right, can we talk again later? Of course. Go forth and prosper. So it's about curiosity. It's about being open. It's about listening for those transformative questions.
When you say curiosity, so let me just back up before I ask this question.
Sure.
So I've studied many visionary leaders in my research, and there's a trend among visionaries is that I call them ambitiously curious. They have this insatiable, unquenchable curiosity that pulls them into new contexts, constantly absorbing those new contexts with new individuals so that they can invent and create new contexts in their own lives. So an example like Walt Disney. Walt Disney was never satiated. He was never satisfied with any accolade, with any accomplishment. In fact, he disparaged his team for spending too much time reveling in the Academy Award or the accomplishment. And so he always was pushing forward and moving and out of his comfort zone, if you will. Right? I don't know that he didn't ever say this, but I believe he would agree that comfort was the enemy of progress for him. And so, so he would read copiously. He would observe and go to different places. And it was, I don't want to call it necessarily a childlike curiosity, but in some ways it was this expression of wonder.
Why do we call it childlike curiosity?
Let's go there.
Why do you think we call it childlike curiosity?
Do you want me to answer that? I can answer that if you'd like me to.
Well, I've asked you twice, so if you don't want to.
I feel like I'm being interviewed now. Well, it's been said that adults they've been taught out of being curious, and where children are still expanding and absorbing, and they don't have the inhibitions and the worries that maybe they'll be judged, or they have to fit into a certain societal norm or something like that.
They're not worried about whether or not the idea is the right idea. They have an idea. They're going to pursue it. I'm going to go climb up there and I'm going to jump off and see what happens. Right? The creative mind, which all of us have. I've done sessions on leadership and been challenged by people. Well, I don't really think I'm that creative. Okay. At that time, people were driving to and from an office every day. And I said, okay, so do you drive to work? Yes. How long of a drive is it? Sometimes 20, sometimes 30. Oh, so you've had to find alternate routes between your home and the office? Yes. That's creativity.
That's right.
Right? I don't like the phrase solving a problem, because problem sounds like it's this knot that we must untie. I want to capture opportunity. And if I have an opportunity to express a song in a new and unique way, I'm very excited about that. If I have an opportunity to pull something out of someone that they did not know was there, that is leadership. That is musical, because it is the exchange of those tones and those, what I refer to as the clicks and whistles, right? That's what language is. It's clicks and whistles and some humming, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes the most beautiful parts of performances are not when words are being spoken, but when they're either scat singing or there's humming. I mean, it sticks with people.
Yeah.
So there are a couple of things. I mean, we can go in about 472 different directions just on this particular topic. The distinction between the brain and the mind, I think I got away from that because we started going into curiosity and creativity. The mind is limitless. And every morning I remind myself of that. So I don't think, oh, well, I'm limited to blank. It's, okay, where can I take this? What will another hour of practice, what will that prompt me or equip me to do when I perform on Saturday night? What will another hour of practice do for my audience, not for me? Not so that they can, I mean, I play at a restaurant. It's not like I'm putting on concerts, right? People are chatting, they're clinking glasses, all that stuff. So I love the Disney connection, because there are two really significant quotes from him that stay with me over time. Number one, do what you do so well that when people see what it is that you do, they want to come back and see you do it again, and they bring other people with them to see what you do. I was at a travel agents convention in Cabo San Lucas, and the keynote speaker at lunch was a marketing person from the Disney organization. This is 10, 12 years ago. And she put a slide up, and it literally caused a gasp in the entire room. She said 75% of the people walking around any Disney property on Earth have been there before on any given day of the 365 days in the year. You want to talk about repeat business. That's amazing.
Indeed.
Do what you do so well that when people see what you do, they want to come back and see you do it again, and they'll bring other people with them to see what you do. The second is sobering. And it was in, oddly enough, a clubhouse room. I just happened to open a room with one of my other collaborators, a guy named Isaac Noor, who is this brilliant, creative inventor and designer. And we just happened to be talking about flow. And we just happened to get a production executive from Disney in the room. This is 3 months ago. And we were talking about genius. Now, there's a school of thought, well, everybody has their own inner genius. You know what? I don't know about that. I think we're all creative, but let's not get into gradations of how creative we are. And either Isaac or I asked the gentleman, so what was the big learning? What did you have to adapt to being an executive at Disney? He says, what Walt said almost every day: there are no geniuses on the lot.
That's right.
Nobody's got it going on more than anyone else here. My animators are just as important and just as gifted as my secretary, and that's why that was part of his whole first name basis name tag thing. Number one, everyone's part of the show. Number two, there is no hierarchy. Yes, he's the president and owner, and Roy, was the money guy. Everyone has a role to play. Everyone participates in putting on the best show. He used to walk around and pick up cigarette butts off the floor at Disneyland. It's interesting you mentioned him, because I just finished reading his biography that was, I believe, written by the same guy that wrote the Jobs biography.
No, that was, if you're thinking about Walter Isaacson wrote the Jobs biography, and Neil Gabler wrote the
okay.
800 pages.
So I stand corrected. Yeah. I stand corrected, and I also stand flat-footed, but that's a personal problem. Groucho Marx, 1936.
Nice. You know what else he did is that he focused his attention on imagination in such a way that he believed, he actually credited naivete in terms of like not knowing. He would say that, it's nice not knowing what's impossible, because I'll pursue it and make the impossible possible. And so this is where we're also talking about those self-limiting beliefs that children don't necessarily have, that we gain, we add them to the list of lids as adults. And so in the creative imagination aspect, we've got to open the mind and
open the valve. And the beauty of the valve is that there is no it's not like the hose out front where it'll only open so much. It'll open as wide as you're ready to open it, right? And thinking about language and thinking about, bless you, how people connect. You can put two children who have learned different languages in a sandbox, on a playground, on your front lawn, and they will figure out how to play together. They don't need the same language to be able to collaborate, to be able to connect, and to be able to have fun. Because isn't that our first instinct? Isn't that our first instinct? It was that we want to have fun. We want to enjoy what we're doing. And here again, and not that I'm anti, the American mindset. I grew up in it, yay capitalism, the whole thing. The reason I pointed out is that in my naval career and in my taking the family on vacations, I've had the opportunity to spend time in other countries. And I tell you, other countries get a lot right. Lower stress. It's not about the almighty whatever is the currency. It's interesting because I wrote this down. I didn't know that I was going to use it today, but I have shared this with some of my coaching clients. Experiences are our most treasured currency. I told my kids years ago, and now, of course, I'm paying for it because I told them, I don't want you to buy me stuff for my birthday or Christmas anymore. I just want us to do things together. And that was great, fine, and wonderful until year 5, where I don't get nothing. I don't even get a stinking tie. Not that I would wear it. But here's the thing. I would rather go somewhere and spend the day with one of my kids or both of my kids or my son and my daughter-in-law, whatever, than have a box of something that I'm going to have to find a place for. The great thing about experiences is they are our most treasured currency, and we get to recall them. We get to revisit them. One of my favorite books I'm rereading now, I think it's either time 5 or 6, answering the question, how do you want to spend your time? I would love to have this book memorized. It's called Proust Was a Neuroscientist. Have you ever read it?
I have not.
Proust was a French novelist who had a very interesting life, very challenged life, and he wrote in great detail about the power of memory and how memories change the second we describe them. And every time that we do describe them, inside the brain, the chemistry and the physiology changes.
Explain.
Well, if you think of a significant moment in your life and you look to explain it to someone, you cannot help but embellish because you're remembering something in particular from that moment. And while you explain it with new language, with new description, that memory kind of supersedes the previous version. So no matter what clarity we have in memory, when we recall it, and that is a very accurate word for it, we recall it, we call it back to the frontal lobe. It looks, it smells, it sounds, it feels different. Not inaccurate, different.
Huh. That's interesting.
And memory is such an emotional driver for who we are, because we want to gather them, we want to create them, we want to revisit. The older we get, the more we want to revisit them, right?
Yeah.
What is people? One of the main reasons people are uncomfortable with older people is that they spend a lot of time talking about the past. It's because they haven't created any new experiences recently.
Yeah.
It's not a person who's, bound to a chair or a bed. It's not their fault. It's a fact.
Well, and I think that takes us right back to this idea of creativity, imagination, clarity, leadership, because you'd rightly mentioned about how, leadership is, and this is before we started recording, is about the future. And you think about vision, vision by definition is imagination, because it has not yet become a reality. It's still yet to be experienced, right? The vision of the future. And so when we're talking about creating a vision as leaders, how we are simply expressing what this future state might look like, and then those who would like to go alongside of us on this journey, this experiential journey, will ultimately be influenced to traverse that route, i.e., so you think about, you'd mentioned stuff like when my son was, about 5. I come home from the office. It'd been a late day, and he says, "Dad, can we talk?" So, yeah, sure, let's talk. I said, "Sit down, Dad." Of course, you're 5-year-old, he's a little mousy little kid. And he said, "Dad," with a serious voice, "I don't need any more stuff." Said, "Oh, okay." And then, John, he just drops the bomb. "I just need more of your time." He's 5. And I mean, being a parent, right to the gut. And it just hit me so hard is what you're saying. He wants, he believes, he didn't articulate the way you did, but experiences are our most treasured currency. The experience that he wants to create with his dad, and I was flabbergasted. He's 14 now, and he still wants to hang out with me. So I think we're rocking, right? But he believes that currency is so much more valuable than me being gone and creating more liquid currency in terms of dollars. Mm-hmm. Because that value proposition is nowhere near as important to him as the experiences we can create together.
Before we started recording, what I said emphatically was every leadership conversation is about the future. Me planning experiences with the family and with friends, that's almost as exciting as the actual experience.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Terry and I are planning a trip up to Whitefish Lake in Montana. I have been in, I think, 33 of the states. Never been to Montana. So I'm excited about that. The planning is as exciting as the actual event. And when you are interested in crafting and delivering leadership language, that language has got to both create some imagery, not necessarily paint a picture because that's too literal.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to create some imagery that people connect to. And by connecting to it, they throw their grappling hook right onto the side of it, and they're ready to ride it. And when you can draw talent, ideas, skills, abilities out of people by having them throw that grappling hook on the side of that ship and just have that real smooth and exciting ride with you, then, you said vision is imagination. I have an addendum that came out of an excited utterance. I'm sitting with one of my closest friends, a very successful writer by the name of Michael Albanese. He's written screenplays, novels. We always, whenever we sit down for coffee, we bring a notebook because we hope to God that the other one is going to say something brilliant.
Nice.
And we were talking about vision. And I just looked at him one day and I said, vision is imagination put to work. Think about Disney. He took his imagination and put it to work. Not only that, but he said, I'm going to take the imagination of all these incredibly brilliant people, none of which are going to be called geniuses. They're going to be called contributors. And I'm going to rename what it means to work at a creative company. We're going to have something called Imagineering. That word never existed before Mr. Disney. And it has lived long after his existence. And vision is imagination put to work. What do I want for my people? What do I want from them? Those two simple, quote, simple, air quotes, simple pronouns make a huge dividing line between how we think about the people for whom we are responsible. First person to ever create a leadership role for me is still in my life. Her name is Jennifer Yester. And she came to me and said, I think you would be a great leader. I want you to be a manager in my company. And I took her up on the offer. And she said something to me, it's got to be 30 years ago. Beauty of phrases like that, of this language of music that she used. She says, here's the thing. Everybody that reports to you is your precious inventory. They can go work somewhere else at any time.
Wow. I've never heard of people being labeled or classified as their precious inventory. It's beautiful.
What is a company? A company is a collection of humans.
Right.
It's not the product. It's not the platform. It's what people do with it. And what do you want for them? I want for that person to become. I want for that person to feel. I want for that person to flower. What do you want from them? Hit their number. Be a contributor.
The irony is that these Imagineers, which I love how you know so much about Disney. This is fantastic. So these Imagineers were born. And so we have imagination and engineering, right? So that's the idea. And so the imagination certainly comes first, right? What can become, right? What would we love to see happen that has not yet happened? And then let's engineer it. Let's make it real. But the back to your point about inventory. So initially, Imagineers were the same person, right? The Imagineer, Disney was recruiting these individuals. And a little bit about the backstory on that, and this is why it's so important to your concept of inventory. So Disney had a
precious inventory.
What's it again? Precious inventory. That's absolutely right.
They are your precious inventory,
and that's important. It's important.
There's one thing. I mean, the Amazon has a facility right over here, right near where I live, and has 200 employees. And I swear to God, it's 5 miles long. They got a bunch of boxes of stuff. That's not what makes Amazon. What makes Amazon is the people that walk in that building and walk out every day.
Yeah.
That's the precious inventory, because they make the inventory make sense so that they can deliver faster and for a better price.
That's right. So here's what Disney did, and this is so important. He suffered a strike in the early 40s during during the time where unionization was becoming broadened and whatnot. And so he felt his family was shattered. His utopia was shattered during this strike. Well,
he took it personally.
Indeed. So these individuals, as he gets this idea for the park and starts trying, working to ramp it up, he begins to pluck very specific individuals from the animation, the live action divisions, who were literally his precious inventory. These individuals he knew that would be loyal to his vision, loyal to his desires, who were bought into the grand picture, who were not deterred by self-limiting beliefs, were able to walk and take this journey alongside of him with complete conviction. And it was the symbiosis of relationship between him and these Imagineers, who he viewed as, and I love the word you use, precious, because they were precious to him. They were essential. They were necessary. He could not move his vision forward without them.
And without harmony. Indeed.
Yeah. So how do you develop? I mean, you it sounds like you have an innate sense of curiosity. Is this true? Is it something that has had?
Oh yeah, it's insatiable.
Yeah.
I mean, I read 3 books at once. Drives my wife nuts.
Do you recommend reading to develop creativity and imagination? And I ask you this. Let me preface it. We live in a world today where many people have stopped reading. We live in
to their peril.
Say it again.
To their peril.
Okay, explain. Tell me why.
There's a big difference between information and knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
There is a big difference between awareness and understanding.
Mm. Mm. So what happens to the brain?
People have been talking about the breakdown of society for centuries, Doc. Centuries. It's all going to you know where. I don't think so. Nope. I've raised 2 functioning humans who pay their own bills and enjoy productive relationships. Oh, that generation blank. You know what? My parents said the same thing about my generation. We're doing okay.
Yeah.
Can we do better? Are there issues? Are there challenges? Of course there are. Of course there are. There were in 587 AD. Sorry. It's just the reality of life. So people don't read as much? Well, I do. That's all I can worry about.
Yeah.
I mean, I have been giving out a business card for nearly 18 years now, the back of which has 10 daily aspirations. It says on it, every day. Now, this is a note card that I write personal notes to people. And if I hadn't picked this up and let you know about it, I was going to get your address and send you one. So I probably still will anyway, because, now I'm committed. I had written a list in 2008. So it's actually, how long ago is that? 13 years now? It's not 18 years. I had written down a list of things that I wanted to aspire to every day. And the list, I typed it out, printed it rather, I laminated it, and I put it in my wallet so that every time I pulled my wallet out, I would see it and I would reread it. It was for me. Sat down at lunch one day with a friend of mine, opened up my wallet because, of course, we had to fight over who was going to pay for lunch. And the little laminated piece fell out, and he picked it up and he read it. And he says, "What is this?" I said, "I'm just trying to keep my mind straight, man." Well, my friend was also my printer. And he says, "Do me a favor, send me this. Email me this." Okay. Didn't think of it again until 5 days later, where he called me. He says, "On your way home, stop by the shop. I have something for you." He had designed and printed 100 business cards with my name on the front, my phone number, my email, and it said author, speaker, coach. And on the back of the card, he had put this list of 10. And he says, "You should give these out." Well, I have been giving them out since 2008. And people have sent me photos of my business card on their computer monitor on the dashboard of their car. And I bring this up for a reason, because the 7th aspiration is read for 1 hour.
How often? Daily?
This says every day at the top.
Every day.
Read for 1 hour every day. I got that from being in the same room with a phenomenal author by the name of Brian Tracy. And I was doing a breakout session for the California Association of Staffing Consultants, and Mr. Tracy was the keynote speaker. And he said, if you want to double your income, read for an hour a day. If you want to triple it, read for 2 hours. I took that very much to heart, and for the next 18 months, I read an hour a day, and I did double my income.
Outstanding.
What I also did was I identified a pursuit of inquiry. A path of inquiry. It's hard to say for a New Yorker. And I didn't even know it was a path of inquiry until it was pointed out to me by a client who was an attorney from San Diego. She said, that's your path of inquiry. It's all about language for you. That opened up the valve about 50 turns. I said, I think it is. So I spoke to my wife, and she's like, yeah. I spoke to my sister. Yeah, no kidding. Everybody knows that about you, John. What? You're all about language. You're all about words and sentences and phrases and novels and historical fiction. Everyone, my sister, my wife, my closest friends, whenever I said to them, hey, my client told me that for me, it's really about language. And they were like, everyone that knows you knows this about you. It's about time you realized it. So that has been my introduction to my work, to everyone I meet ever since. Well, what do you do, John? Well, to me, it's all about the language. And look at what it did for you and I, Nate.
Yeah, indeed. Yes, it did. And this is a challenge, John, though. Let's just, for many for those who might be listening who have just embraced a video world where, YouTube videos are predominant, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I think that there's more, right? There's more. There's
always more. You said that it's about depth for you.
Yes.
For me, the two driving words are depth and resonance.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And can I get depth in my understanding of the guitar by watching more YouTube videos? To a certain point. And then I got to sit in the room with a master.
Yeah.
I have to have that person watch what I do, listen to how I play, hear what it is I'm looking to achieve. Then that master can take me further on the path.
And that's part of this. I mean, there's even reading, if you're reading someone's book, and hopefully you're reading someone's book that has an element of mastery, right? Like, for example, the book one of your books, not necessarily a plug, but definitely How to Sell Without Being a Jerk. There's a mastery of understanding in this work of how to sell without being a jerk. There's aspects of it that you've culminated, you've fleshed out. It's incredibly daunting for many of us to write a work, whether it's published or unpublished. When I wrote my dissertation, even though it was almost 500 pages, I mean, it was laborious, and not necessarily I enjoyed it, but there was some deep work involved, and when you write, you're constantly working out each sentence, each paragraph, each phrase, right? And so that's part of the art. But I guess the point I'm making is that you're learning from someone who has really invested in a great way and made sacrifices, because you're making a sacrifice with your time by doing it, right?
Well, people ask me, what's the toughest thing about writing a book? And I say, well, there are three. And they are all, interestingly enough, back to the number 3, right? They are all as difficult. And if you want to leave any of these 3 out, you will not complete the work. I like the larger work. I like longer songs. I like epic novels, right? In my books, 3 hardest things: starting it, finishing it, maintaining a consistent voice throughout.
Mm.
The second the author goes too far afield, the second the author cannot maintain the voice, the consistent voice, it doesn't have to be you certainly don't want the same voice in every book, right? My book on leading sales teams has a very different tone because it is to a different audience and it's a different set of skills than the book that you just were kind enough to let people know about. So the three hardest things about a dissertation, and the reason that many people never finish them, is that finishing it is one of the equally three difficult things, right? Starting, okay, I'm going to. You familiar with Stephen Pressfield?
No, I'm not.
Okay, Stephen Pressfield wrote an amazing book called The War of Art. And people say, do you mean The Art of War? No. If I meant The Art of War, I would say The Art of War. The War of Art. Anyone that wants to accomplish anything significant, like writing a book, doing a dissertation, writing a symphony, writing a song, this book is 170 pages, give or take, and every single word in it is true. Every single word in it is true. He talks about how you can open the valve and stop talking about doing something and actually get it done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He says that we are all victims of, we all respond to resistance. And resistance is a beast,
mm-hmm.
and resistance will crush the creative person. He says, here's the thing. Every morning, the creative person gets up and says, I will absolutely write a great symphony. I'll just do it tomorrow.
Right. Right. Yeah, you're absolutely right. In fact, even with dissertation writing, many PhD students have ABDs, which is all but dissertation, right? They just aren't able to finish. Only about half finish. And it's this road, like you said, this starting the road, and then the finishing aspect of it is, so daunting to many. And I think part of it is because they don't have the anchor that's pulling them across. And I say anchor, maybe I should use a different word, but there's an anchor that I see at the end of, or maybe a pulley, whatever you want to call it, at the end of the journey.
I'm curious where you're going with this. I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah, and it's driving you to finish strong. And so, how do you write? Well, let me finish.
You didn't finish your dissertation because some external force was driving.
No, it's not. But
you finished your dissertation because you freaking wanted to.
But the anchor is not necessarily external. It's I wanted to finish because for many reasons, internally and externally. But the heart of it, as you mentioned, execution, right? Mm-hmm. Is I'm a firm believer in vision is out there, and you focus on vision for a very short period of time, and the rest is execution, the day to day. What do I have to do every day to get this done? And for me, my goal was 1 year, one dissertation. It was actually way over 500, but I had to cut it down. But it was 2 hours a day, designated time. And it was nonstop. And it didn't matter whether it was raining or shining, everybody was at a barbecue, whether we were on vacation. I mean, it was nonstop because I was focused on completing that goal in the time period allotted, because I knew the only way. And I also had a note on my desk that said, "This is not your magnum opus. This is not your master work. In fact, a good dissertation is a finished dissertation. It should be the worst. It's been said. It should be the worst piece of published writing you'll ever write." Now, for those of us who are, driven to write exceptionally well, that can be a stumbling block, because we may, I know some of my colleagues and classmates they're just hanging on this dissertation work to try to just produce this beautiful masterpiece, and that's not the goal.
Well, there's one thing to be productive. It's another to hope that you will be perfect.
Right. Yeah. Even Steve Jobs said, "Real artists ship." Right. I mean, that was so.
Yeah, man.
So
I love that.
Yeah. So to bring all this in full circle, and I love how we didn't even really talk about sales. Even though, because
you're kidding, we've been talking about sales for 45 minutes.
Thank you very much. Right. Because we've got to understand, and there's so much more, boy. I got to have you back on, because we didn't even talk about listening as an essential aspect, but we've been listening to each other and growing and learning and becoming more creative and having greater clarity and imagination simply by listening to each other intently and beginning to assimilate new ideas, because change is an essential aspect of vision actualization, right? Because if we're not changing and adapting in this environment, no one's going to follow us, because we're not going anywhere.
People do not want to be told what to do. If someone has a job, has a role, they know what to do. They want to be shown how to do it better. They want to be shown how it can connect to who they are, to what their purpose is. So for me, great leadership requires or allows for certain things. Number one, leaders don't call attention to themselves. They focus and point people to a compelling future. Compelling, not for the leader, for the people. Great leaders are always the best listener in the room, no matter what room they're in. And a listener doesn't mean they sit there quietly. It means that they're absorbing and they're paying attention, they're observing. Because observation is another key component of leadership. When you and I write our book together, we'll focus on that. And leadership is about the distinction between motivation and inspiration. And I will boil it down to this, and we can talk about this on Clubhouse or somewhere else. Motivation fades. Inspiration feeds.
John, I think that is a perfect place to let our audience simmer over those thoughts. Tell the folks who are listening where they can find you.
Klymshyn.com. My last name has no vowels in it, unless you're a language fanatic and you insist that Y's are vowels, but they are only in proper names, and last name is not considered a proper name. So how do people reach me? Klymshyn.com, Klym like Mary, S like Sam, HYN.com. I'm also on Audible. I have 4 books on Audible. Go to audible.com, type in my last name. You'll find all 4 of them. One is about creativity. One is about the depth of language. One is about leading sales teams. And one is the one that you mentioned. And I narrate all of them. One of those I co-narrate with my collaborator. Anyone that listens to this and would like to go deeper, learn more, all they have to do is email me at john@klymshyn.com. And in the subject line, put every day. And in the body of the email, put their address, and I will send them a personal note that has my list of 10 things to aspire to every day.
How generous. John Klymshyn, what a blessing. What an honor. Thank you so much for joining us and speaking life to our group. Have a wonderful rest of your day, my friend.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.